Around the world, tracks of steel and timber have tied countries together, providing quick and effective transportation for people and their products. And yet, sometimes, timetables and travel plans change, not by choice, but by chance. In Italy, a train enters a tunnel on a routine run. When it comes out, most of its passengers are dead. In Canada, a holiday special carrying weekend vacationers never makes it home. Instead, death is the final destination. March 1944. World War II is in its 5th year, but in Italy it is all but over. Allied troops have been behind Nazi lines since January, and Rome is about to fall. Life is particularly difficult in villages south of the capital, between the port city of Naples and the large agricultural town of Potenza.
Ma all'epoca esistevano le tessere, o avevi la tessera e quindi ti era passata la quantità di cibo per sopravvivere.
At the time, food was distributed by ration card. If you had the card, you'd be given enough to survive. Otherwise, you had no help. This situation led to smuggling. It was mostly between the major towns, like Potenza, Salerno, and Naples. They were smuggling goods for survival, things like eggs, oil, bread, cheese, which had high taxes on them.
Pane, formaggi, perché anche quelli erano super tassati.
The most efficient way to travel to the southern provinces is by train, but only those with a permit can purchase a ticket, and only a certain number of passengers are allowed to travel each week. Most don't even bother with a ticket, choosing instead to hop freight trains and ride the rails to their destinations. Station crews are used to seeing hundreds of so-called black marketeers riding wherever they can find room. One of the most popular trains is the 8017. Every Friday night it leaves Naples for its weekly run to Bari on the East Coast.
Nel 1944 la linea ferroviaria Bari-Napoli.
In 1944, the railway line Bari-Naples was a very important one. I think it was more important then than it is today. That line represented the connection between two important cities of southern Italy, and it went through the whole Basilicata region, the Potenza province, and the Matara province.
Almost everyone knows the 8017 by its nickname, the Black Market Express. Although smuggling is officially prohibited, authorities turn a blind eye, realizing that for many, it is the only way to feed their families. Friday evening, March 2nd, 1944. The 8017 pulls out of Naples Station right on schedule. It has 42 freight cars, 4 passenger coaches, and a caboose. As soon as it leaves the station, hundreds of non-paying passengers climb aboard. More will join them at stations along the way.
Il treno trasportava sicuramente oltre 500 persone. Naturalmente,
there were more than 500 people on the train for sure. Those 500 people, though, were not in passenger cars like we know them. They were on cargo cars, either inside them or on the car's bumpers, which was a very dangerous thing to do.
Ciro Pernici is one of those passengers, a young man of 19 who gets on the train in Salerno. He is on his way to Bellamuro to look for food for himself and his 4 brothers. Domenico Mieli is one of the paying customers, an olive oil salesman who takes the train every week. Luigi Cozzolino also has a ticket. He is a shopkeeper from the village of Racina, traveling with his wife and 8-year-old son. As usual on this run, 2 powerful locomotives are at the front of the train. 25-year-old head engineer Matteo Giuliani is at the controls.
In particolare, uno di essi, nonostante fosse
Matteo Giuliani, in spite of his young age, was regarded as a myth of the railway of Campania because he was very good. Back then, to be regarded as a very good engineer at 25 was like to be a successful manager at 30 or 40 today. It meant you had reached a high level of professionalism.
Together, the locomotives can pull as much as 500 tons up the steady incline of the Apennine Mountains. On this particular run, they are fueled with low-grade coal from Yugoslavia, and it takes extra shovelfuls to give them the power they need.
le condizioni nelle quali si trovava.
The situation in southern Italy at the time did not allow for better quality coal. The war situation demanded that the military got the good quality coal.
At 12 minutes after 12 midnight, the Black Market Express pulls into Balvano Station. With well over 500 passengers on board, the train exceeds the maximum weight for a two-engine pull by 11 tons. The trackmen on duty check the two locomotives and 47 cars that make up the train. The men are wet and cold. A drizzly sleet has been falling most of the day, leaving the tracks wet and glossy. They see that once again the express is crowded with unauthorized passengers and recognize many of the faces. One of the paying customers gets off the train to stretch his legs. Olive oil salesman Domenico Miele covers his face and neck with a scarf to protect himself from the biting cold before climbing back on board. At 12:50 a.m., Station Master Vincenzo Malio gives the all-clear signal to the engineers. As the train pulls away from Balvano Station, brakeman Michele Paolo climbs into the caboose. Another brakeman, Giuseppe Di Venuto, jumps into the 11th car from the locomotives. Station Master Vincenzo Malio sends word to the next stop that the train is on its way, then hands the controls to his assistant, Giuseppe Salogna. There is only one more train that night, the 8025, due to arrive behind the Black Market Express in the next hour and a half. Bellamuro, the next station on the line, is 8 kilometers away. It's a rugged stretch of track framed by a huge mountain gorge and characterized by a succession of trestle bridges, extensive tunnels, and a steep incline.
La linea parte da un livello molto
The
basso.
line starts at low level and reaches Potenza, which is at over 800 meters above sea level. The angle of the track is 13 1/1000ths, which means it rises 13 centimeters every 1,000 meters. So there is an angle for sure.
As the 8017 exits the tunnel near Balvano Station, engineer Matteo Giuliani orders his firemen to stoke the fire with more coal to make sure they can climb the upgrades ahead. The express passes through a second tunnel and crosses a trestle that feeds into a long cavern cut deep into the mountain. It is known as Galleria dell'Armi.
La galleria è la più lunga e per giunta è anche quella che ha il minor
The
numero
Galleria
di
della
residenze.
Armi is the longest and also the one with fewer air intakes. Due to the mountain shape, the tunnel did not have the big windows that in the other tunnels would allow the circulation of fresh air.
200 meters into the Galleria, the wheels of the express begin to slip on the wet rails. The heavy train slows to a stop, then begins to roll backwards. In the 11th car, brakeman Giuseppe Di Venuto feels the train moving back and throws on the manual brakes. The train stops with only 2 cars and the caboose outside the tunnel.
In base ai regolamenti ferroviari il treno non poteva retrocedere, i frenatori, perché è probabile che il treno fosse dotato di
Railway
una parte
regulations did not allow the train to back up. The brakeman saw the train back up and maybe thought some cars had gotten loose, which was not an unusual thing.
cioè che dei vagoni si fossero staccati, non era un incidente così
so they followed the rules and braked.
Inside the tunnel, head engineer Matteo Giuliani again orders more coal to help power them up the incline, unaware that this particular coal is part of the problem.
Di sicuro una causa, una parte rilevante nella sciagura ha il carbone.
An important role in the tragedy was played for sure by the coal from Yugoslavia that the engines were burning.
Molto fumo, ma non dava molta forza.
The coal would give a lot of smoke, but not a lot of energy. I think this caused the train to enter the tunnel slowly and then stop in the tunnel without being able to start moving again.
The crew shovels more fuel into the fireboxes of both locomotives, but it's no use. The wheels continue to spin on the slippery tracks, unable to find a grip.
Il treno non riusciva ad andare avanti perché non aveva la forza, diciamo, il vapore non era così forte, così
The train could not go forward because the steam was not enough to move it, and it could not back up because some cars were stopping it. Then we have to remember the decisive element. The engines would emit smoke so rapidly and abundantly that it filled up the tunnel in a few minutes.
In pochi minuti la galleria fu invasa completamente dal fuoco.
Many of the passengers are asleep, oblivious to the fact that the poisonous smoke trapped in the tunnel is creeping into the cars. Most passengers on the Black Market Express are unaware that the train has stopped. Like many, 19-year-old Ciro Pernici is asleep in one of the freight cars, a heavy military cloak wrapped around his head to keep warm. Shopkeeper Luigi Cozzolino and his family are dozing in one of the passenger coaches. Olive oil salesman Domenico Miele is still awake. In the last few minutes, he's developed a nagging cough and he's feeling sick to his stomach. Wrapping his scarf over his nose and mouth, he walks to another passenger car to escape the smoke.
Ma la scena è quando più di qualcuno che forse erano
We can assume that some passengers started noticing that they were not feeling well. They were disoriented, so they went towards the back exit rather than the front one, thinking that the train had just entered the tunnel, while in fact it was well over the middle of it.
In the caboose, brakeman Michele Paolo assumes that the engineer has stopped for a signal. When the train doesn't move again, he decides to investigate. 100 yards into the tunnel, he is suddenly hit by a wave of nausea, followed by the horrible realization of what is happening. At Balvano Station in Italy's Apennine Mountains, Assistant Station Master Giuseppe Salonia is concerned. It's 2:20 in the morning, and train 8025 is due to arrive at any moment. Yet he has received no confirmation that the 8017, known as the Black Market Express, has reached Bellamuro, the next station on the line. Salonia contacts Bellamuro and is told that the express has not arrived and is already more than an hour late. He immediately telegraphs an alert down the line. Luigi Quaratino is a telegraph operator in Potenza.
8017, ecco, questo è stato il nostro cruccio dalle 2 in poi, 2 e mezza.
The 8017, that was our trouble, starting at 2:30 a.m. We needed to know where it was to decide the route of another train coming from Potenza. If the 8017 did not get to its destination, the other train could not leave Potenza.
La marcia di questo 8017.
It's up to the station crew at Balvano to find out what has happened. When the 8025 arrives just after 2:30 a.m., Assistant Station Master Salonia decides to use its locomotive to look for the missing train. He is uncoupling the locomotive when Michele Paolo stumbles into view. The brakeman for the 8017 is faint with exhaustion and repeats the same words over and over. They are dead. They are all dead.
Mentre amministravo gli altri circuiti, sentii un SOS.
While I was taking care of the other circuits, I heard an SOS.
Risposi e mi fu comunicato con questi notizie.
And I got a telegram saying that train 8017 had stopped in the Galleria della Armi due to insufficient traction. They did not know what had happened.
The station crew at Balvano is about to find out. Trackman Giuseppe Motta is a member of the search party that arrives almost 4 hours after the Black Market Express enters the tunnel.
Quindi erano troppi gas nel fumo, quello si manteneva a 20 centimetri dal sole e dalla terra. E quindi
there was a lot of smoke. It raised 20 centimeters from the floor. We were breathing through a mask. The boss kept masks at the station in case things like these would happen. I smelled sulfur. It was a very strong smell, even with the mask on.
The crew enters one of the rail cars. They find passengers inside, relaxing in their seats, apparently sleeping. But they are not asleep. They are dead from carbon monoxide poisoning. Farther into the tunnel, the search party finds the crew of the 2 locomotives, dead in their cabs. Head engineer Matteo Giuliani is still at his throttle, his head resting on the window pane.
It seems that they tried to load the engines to get power. But the more coal they would put in, the more carbon monoxide would come out. And that turned out to be deadly. Carbon monoxide makes people drowsy. Then it intoxicates the nerve cells, and the process is irreversible. The people closer to the engines would inhale more and would die in 5 to 10 minutes.
On their faces, they were yellow. The color yellow was the color of the smoke, the color of the smoke.
There are bodies outside the train as well. Miraculously, some are alive.
Quindi queste persone o rimasero intossicate senza rendersi conto di quello che
These people either were intoxicated without knowing what was going on, or they knew what was going on, tried to run away and got hurt. While trying to get away, they fell or jumped off the train.
Il fumo pieno di zolfo si sistema in tutta la galleria, ma lascia scoperta
We have to keep in mind the situation in the tunnel. The smoke, full of sulfur, fills the tunnel, but there is a gap about 20 centimeters off the ground. If a passenger had got off the train and had fainted on the ground, he would have been lucky, since there was no smoke there and he could breathe oxygen.
The rescue crew uses their locomotive to pull the stricken train back to Balvano, but only after trackman Giuseppe Motta inspects the cars on the 8017.
E Motta ha raccontato di aver trovato dei vagoni frenati, quindi
Mr. Motta said the brakes were engaged in some of the cars, which gives substance to the hypothesis that the brakeman activated the brakes, thinking the train had split somehow. The fact that some cars had the brakes engaged makes us think that maybe that night there was a misunderstanding between engineers and brakemen.
A crowd gathers at Balvano as the Black Market Express finally arrives with its gruesome cargo. March 3rd, 1944, 5:10 a.m. The Black Market Express returns to Balvano station. Police and the military organize the removal of bodies from the train. Residents of Balvano are there to help.
E abbiamo incominciato a scendere questi morti.
On the first locomotive, there were 4 women and 2 men, all dead. Some had a handkerchief, some had a cigarette in their hand.
Io ho visto una fotografia dei cadaveri allineati sui marciapiedi della stazione.
I have seen a picture of the corpses lined up on the sidewalks, and it was a tragic view. 500 corpses lined up on the two sidewalks of the Bolzano station make for an apocalyptic picture.
Quelli che davano segni di vita nella sala d'aspetti.
In the waiting room of the station, the rescuers were trying to resuscitate the ones that were showing signs of life. They were massaging them and such to wake them up. Some of them survived, but some did not.
Olive oil salesman Domenico Miele is found unconscious in one of the coach cars. The scarf over his nose and mouth helps save his life, although he will forever show the signs of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Via la particolarità che Miele ha sempre raccontato.
Mr. Miele has always said that he woke up the following morning and his black hair had turned completely gray. That means that in one night, the carbon monoxide did something that normally happens in many years of a person's life, which is to turn hair gray.
19-year-old Ciro Pernecci is found with his military cloak still wrapped around his head. It too acts as a filter that saves his life. Shopkeeper Luigi Cozzolino is also revived, only to discover that his wife and 8-year-old son are dead. His brain tissue is so damaged by carbon monoxide that he is mentally incompetent for the rest of his life.
Credo che il problema maggiore sia stato rappresentato dall'intossicazione per alcuni.
The main problem for some people was the intoxication, and I think that according to the papers, about 50 people were kept in the hospital for a few days. The hospital in Potenza, I think, to recover from the carbon monoxide poisoning.
At the end of the day, the final death count is 521. Because many carry false papers or no identification at all, 193 bodies are never identified.
Io credo che nella tarda mattinata comunque nella mattinata del 3 marzo del 1944,
the morning of March 3, 1944, the Allied military authorities arrived in Bolzano. The provincial medical authorities, the provincial doctor from Potenza, who certified the death of those people. There were two needs to be met. They had to hurry up to free the railway line and to bury more than 500 people.
Il discorso era soprattutto di tempi, poiché si sa che in questi casi ci può essere.
It was a question of time. When something like this happens, there's a risk of epidemics. There was no time to dig individual graves. Can you imagine digging 500 graves?
La mattina del 5 marzo ci hanno preso.
The morning of March 5th, the Carabinieri called us to go to the cemetery and dig 3 mass graves, 2 for the women and 1 for the men.
2 per le donne e 1 per gli uomini.
An inquest places blame on the use of an inferior grade of coal and on the added weight of the train itself, increased by the number of unauthorized passengers traveling that night.
Cioè, qui non ci troviamo di fronte ad un incidente ferroviario classico in cui il treno deraglia.
This was not the usual train accident where the train goes off the track and people die. There is no crash. The train did not manage to exit the tunnel. Why? The only explanation is that the poor quality of the coal did not allow the engines to perform properly.
E dopo la disgrazia, la ferrovia.
After the disaster, the railway authorities decided to have a permanent post at the Galleria dell'Armi. A railway worker would be guarding the tunnel day and night to check for smoke.
It is one of the strangest rail disasters in history, and one of the worst. Yet only one newspaper is allowed to publish the story, burying it on an inside page.
Una tragedia del genere oggi occuperebbe le prime pagine dei giornali per molti giorni e
today it would be in the front pages for many days. It would be major news.
La maggior parte dei telegiornali.
This could not happen back then because of psychological reasons due to the war. 1944 was already one of the worst years of World War II. I don't think the Allies were keen on depressing people even more with such news.
Forse mi posso pure sbagliare. Per me era un rimorso.
I think I felt remorse, the mistake that was made to kill so many people.
September 1st, 1947. The war has been over for 2 years. Many of those enjoying the last long weekend of the summer in the province of Manitoba, Canada, have never heard the story of the Black Market Express. They have their own train to catch, the Moonachie Special, that will take them back to the city for work the next day. One group of vacationers has boat trouble and misses the train, the last one of the evening. Frustrated and angry, they don't realize that this has just become the luckiest day of their lives. September 1st, 1947. Labor Day Monday. The last long weekend of the summer is all but over. In 1947, the Moonachie Special is one of 2 passenger trains that carry summer vacationers from Winnipeg, Manitoba to the Falcon Lake region of northern Ontario.
Going down on Friday night, it was a very busy, packed train, and it stopped a whole lot of places all the way along, letting people off. And then Sunday night, picked them all up again. There were virtually no roads into any of the places along the line at that time. So the train was pretty much it.
The passengers who gather at stations along the line from Reddit to Malachi have left leaving until the last minute. The Moonachie Special is made up of 13 cars. 2 baggage cars are directly behind the engine. Next are 9 passenger coaches built in the early 1900s and lit by gas lamps. At the rear are 2 steel-constructed parlor cars. At Moonachie Station, trainman Gilbert Rougeau helps passengers board the train. Gil is looking forward to seeing his twin son and daughter later that evening. He usually works the rear of the train, but today he has traded positions with the other trainmen.
Wally Douglas was, in seniority, was senior to my father, and his position should have been at the head end with the conductor. But this one evening, Wally Douglas had said to my father that he wasn't feeling that well, and would my father, Gil Rougeau, would he take the front end and he would ride the tail end.
Passengers Catherine Mackay and her husband had planned to take the earlier train home.
We were sailing, gorgeous day, but the wind had dropped. It always does at that sort of thing. So we got the paddles out and everything else, but we just sort of floated on our own reputation, as Father said. So we finally got back to the cottage, and he said, well, we can't make that. And my mother said, well, I'll put a dinner on, and you can make the next one.
12-year-old Ian Manson can't wait to sit in one of the coaches near the front of the train.
I started to head towards the head end of the train to get a coach, and my dad said, no, let's go back here, well, which happened to be the second last coach in the train.
18-year-old Bill Kwasnisha is part of a large group of young people from the local summer camp. 2 coaches have been set aside for them at the front of the train. But the Moonachie conductor is concerned that they will disturb older passengers.
And that's when he said to maybe the train men, you know, they're both in uniform, and he says, we're going to move these coaches to the back of the train. So he says, don't put the suitcases on now, we're going to switch.
Each stop puts the holiday special farther behind schedule. At Malachi, it takes on more passengers, including Daisy Irvine and close friend Joan Jarman.
And I wanted to take the first train home. But it was such a gorgeous day in the last long weekend of the year, and my husband said, oh no, let's stay and take the second train. But it wasn't comfortable. It just seemed to be so hot and stuffy, and I could smell gas or something on that train.
When the special pulls out of Malachi at 7:30 that evening, there are 326 passengers on board. The train is already an hour and a half late. So is the Supercontinental out of Winnipeg. The eastbound passenger train is running in two sections, number 2 and number 4. The Monaco Special has orders to let both passenger trains pass. At 9:15 p.m., the Monaco Special pulls into the siding at Vivian and waits there until the first Supercontinental goes by. The Monaco receives a new order that allows it to continue to Dugald, 22 kilometers east of Winnipeg. There it must take the switch and allow the number 4 passenger train to pass. As the Monaco heads back onto the main line, the number 4 pulls out of Winnipeg. Tonight there is an unofficial passenger riding with the crew.
It was my night off, and it was a nice, beautiful night, 1st September, beautiful summer night, and I asked him if I could go to Reddit. It was a nice trip down there, you know, and that was a nice train to ride on.
At 9:42 p.m., the number 4 arrives at Dugald. The engineer stops the engine on the main line just past the station.
We had a copy of this order to meet this passenger extra engine 6001 when we left Winnipeg. He had rights over us to Dugald, so that's as far as we could go to the east switch.
At the time, order boards at either end of the station are red, indicating to both trains the need to stop to pick up new orders. The Dugald station operator then gives the Monaco a green light, meant to tell the engineer that he has no new orders and to proceed as planned. Once the Monaco pulls into the siding and allows the Supercontinental to go by, it will have a non-stop trip into Winnipeg. Normally, the brakeman from the passenger train would throw the eastbound switch as a courtesy to the other train. Tonight, there isn't time. The Monaco Special is already approaching the station.
As they were coming into Dugald, my dad came into the baggage car and they looked out the side door and they observed the signal was green, and my father made the statement that, oh, this is great, I'll be able to get in and see the twins tonight, we have a clear board.
The engineer of the passenger train sees the Special rounding the bend. He dims his engine lights to allow the Monaco crew to see the switch.
Jack Gibson, the engineer, was sitting on his seat and he was reading the order, and his fireman, Aizen Laurie, was standing here looking through the window, looking ahead. And I was in the middle of the cab, behind the boiler head. I couldn't see anything. And all at once, Hazen mentioned, he said, "Say, says that fella's not heading in." And he said, "By golly, we'd better get off."
All of a sudden I heard this frantic whistle blowing of the train. And the train seemed to be doing this jumping on the rails. He was probably braking so hard, obviously aware of what was going to happen, trying to stop.
September 1st, 1947, 10 o'clock in the evening. The Monaco Special has failed to take the siding at the east switch at Dugald. It is traveling at almost 50 kilometers an hour. On the main line ahead of it is the Supercontinental passenger train. The Monaco slams on its brakes. In one of the passenger coaches, Catherine Mackay's husband reacts to the sound of the brakes.
We heard this noise underneath us, and he said, "They're dropping sand, and they're trying to slow down the train." And then they dropped it again, and he took my head, and he put it down in his lap. and held my head down, and he said, we're going to hit.
And all I remember seeing was his headlight coming. Now, I don't know how, I have no idea how far it was away, but it couldn't have been very far. And I realized that I'd better get out of there. They got off, so I better get off. And then there was just like a psh, like that, and all the different steam pipes on both engines, which you can imagine, the terrible roar of steam, of this steam blowing straight up into the sky.
Windows on farm homes 6 kilometers away are shaken by the sound of the collision. The force of the impact drives the Supercontinental back a full coach length. The Menaki engine folds like an accordion.
The two engines were nose to nose and just almost welded together. They were still upright on their wheels. The tender of the 6046 was down on the cab, and the cab was hammered right down onto the boiler head.
The second baggage car and the first 3 wooden passenger coaches go over the side of the embankment. The baggage car explodes into flames.
And the whole countryside lit up. Was these pinch gas tanks under each coach, which they used in those days for the lighting facilities in the coach. That's what it was. The whole thing lit up just like it was unbelievable.
I do remember sort of coming to and feeling heat. And my thoughts were, I'm going to be burned alive.
Fire rips through the toppled coaches, chasing passengers down the length of the train.
But finally, Hugh said, they were blowing up behind him, we haven't time. So he kicked through the window. He said, okay, you got to get out.
Catherine Mackay and her husband jump from their train car, staring in disbelief at the destruction around them.
Nobody could go back in the carriages. They were going up as fast as, from one boom and then another, because they were all gas.
A Dugald resident, just leaving for work, witnesses the crash. He finds 6 people in the flaming debris. He is able to save 5, including a little girl. 2 men from one of the rear coaches try to save passengers in the second and third cars. They pull 3 people out. 2 are decapitated. 1 has no legs. Rescuers find Menaki engineer Gaylord Lewis slumped unconscious over the controls of his engine. He dies on the way to hospital. Dazed survivors stumble into nearby fields. All they can do now is watch.
You're seeing things, but you're not really taking anything in. I think it was this horrible, shrill, hissing sound of steam, and realizing that I guess so many people seem to be running.
But you could see the flames working their way down the coaches. They were gas lamps in the coaches. They'd see a flash, and then it would go along, and another flash. We knew there was not going to be much left.
There was a lot of people crying, sounds of people crying, and not knowing where to go, what to do, I guess, those that got off the train.
I said the Lord's Prayer. And after that, the Lord is my shepherd. Everything I knew. And thank God for saving my life, but help these people.
Tuesday morning, September 2nd, 1947. The 2 giant locomotives are fused together, a sculpture of twisted metal. The 3 overturned passenger coaches and those still on the rails are completely gutted.
When I saw that cab punched down on that boiler head like just a tissue paper, you might say, that I realized that I was a pretty lucky boy.
The injured are taken by ambulance, truck, and train to hospitals in Winnipeg. The dead are taken to a nearby funeral home. At the funeral home, anxious relatives file past 25 charred bodies laid out on tables. Officials place the remains of clothing and jewelry beside them, hoping they will help with identification. A plain wedding ring helps identify 26-year-old Winnie Simpson. A linen handkerchief belongs to her 17-year-old sister, Betty. Their mother is also one of the victims. The Simpsons are one of several families virtually wiped out by the wreck at Dugald. Mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters gone in the blink of an eye.
We knew of a family that lived close to us, and the husband had been away in the army, and this is the first time that he had come back home, and he decided to take his family on this little weekend trip. And both he and his wife and their son, all three got killed.
On Friday, September 5th, another body is found under the overturned baggage car. 31 are believed dead, with another 85 injured. All are from the holiday train. One passenger believes there would have been more casualties if the Moonachie conductor and trainman had not switched the two crowded camp cars to the end of the train.
They saved us all. There would have been quite a few of us dead. You know, there wouldn't have been only 40. There would have been quite a bit more because we were packed, two cars packed of young people, your age, my age, you know, I mean, 18, 19, 20, 21.
Throughout that week, funeral services are held for the dead, including trainman Gil Rougeau. Wally Douglas, the man he traded places with, survives.
After the crash, my mom was forced to go to work. My grandmother was given the task of raising us children, and my grandfather also came in to assist. They should have been retired, enjoying their golden years, and ended up raising myself and my sister. But I feel I missed out on a lot, not having a father.
For those who cannot be identified, the city of Winnipeg holds a special civic ceremony. A procession of 22 hearses makes its way to the cemetery. A coroner's inquest and Federal Board of Transport inquiry investigate the tragedy.
According to the orders, they should have taken the siding at Dugald to yield to the eastbound train. The engineer on the Camper Special didn't see the headlight, assumed that they had a clear board, and never attempted to stop. They didn't have to stop there for any reason.
The coroner's jury blames the accident on the Moonachie crew's failure to follow written orders. A month later, the Board of Transport's inquiry does the same. The tragedy changes the way trains are run on the Moonachie line. The story of the railroad is an integral part of Canada's history. For many, it remains a symbol of unification and human accomplishment. For others, these ribbons of steel are part of a more intimate experience.
But I think about it, on Labor Day, when it's Labor Day weekend and people are closing their camps, I think about it. I think of what could have been.
Well, it's left a lasting impression, so much so that I have not been on a train since and won't. I'll never go on a train, never.
I'm thankful that I survived. I've lived an extremely, extraordinarily happy life. I've traveled the world. I've raised 3 children. That's all I can think about. I don't want to think about this anymore. That's the way I feel. I'm thankful. God was willing to spare me.
Today, a memorial chapel stands in Balvano, Italy, built by a relative of 2 of the victims of the Black Market Express.
La cappella fu eretta nel cimitero di Balvano, fu fatta costruire
Salvatore Avventurato built the chapel in the cemetery of Balvano. He built it to remember his own father and brother, but I think he also wanted to remember all the other victims.
Ricordare le altre vittime. Del resto, ancora oggi l'attaccamento dei
Still today, the relatives of those victims have a strong connection with Balvano. Twice a year, many people from the Campania region go to Valvano to celebrate a mass for the victims in the chapel dedicated to them.
Far celebrare una messa nella cappella del cimitero che ricorda le vittime.
È un ricordo che non si cancella. Dicevo prima,
It's a memory that does not
sono
go away.
sbiaditi particolari,
As I said
ma non
before,
il
the
ricordo
details might
di quella
fade,
tragedia,
the memory of that tragedy stays.